Hey, it's Rich, the Louisiana Hobby Guy. Today we have a Q&A. In this question and answer session, I'm going to cover a lot of the questions that people ask me on other platforms. Some of the things we'll be discussing are the view style and why my view looks different than yours, the work plane grid and how to move shapes in increments, Lightburn settings, Lightburn device settings, resetting your laser from within Lightburn, a quick overview on libraries, and probably one of the most asked questions that I get is how to cut letters to make signs. With that said, let's get started. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the view. Why is my view different than yours? So if I take, for instance, let's just take this height down to about 50 and I type some text and I go ahead and select that in my cuts and layers and I put that to fill. So why does it fill for me and it doesn't for you? Okay, I'll show you that up here. So in here, if you click on window, you'll see a few different styles here. Wireframe coarse, smooth, filled coarse, filled smooth. And you'll see that I have the filled smooth selected. What this is the rendering of the objects on the screen. And this depends on the power of your computer. If you have an old computer, this is the default setting. So you'll see wireframe coarse is the default setting when you first install Lightburn. There's not a big difference between coarse and smooth. But if we go to filled, you'll see that it gives you the actual preview without having to hit the preview button. So each one of these uses different system resources. This is the least amount of resources. This boosts it up a little bit. This boosts it up a lot. And then this one, which is the one that I use, is the highest amount of resource use. Now, I don't worry about that because I have the equivalent of a gaming computer. So it's going to use very little resources on my computer, but yours may be different. You may have an older computer and you'll want to be in the course. If you have a new computer, you can easily switch to here. Most new computers are going to handle it perfectly, and you'll never have to take a preview until you're ready to actually send the job, just to make sure everything's okay in the preview window. That covers that. The next thing that people talk about is the work plane grid. So here's my grid here. Now I have mine set in all even numbers. So if we come up here to the Lightburn settings, which is the gear icon, you'll see in here is units and grids. If you're using a diode laser, you're going to be setting millimeters per minute. Everything else is going to be pretty much filled out okay. You can leave that alone. But in here, your visual grid spacing, that is the distance between grids right here, between squares. I have mine set at 10 millimeters. I have my snap distance set at 0.5 millimeters. That's how long it takes the object to snap to the grid. I have my tolerance set at 5 pixels. I have my object snap distance at 15 pixels. So what does all of that mean? Well, if I were to change my visual grid spacing to 40 as an example, watch what happens to the grid behind us. You see how it got much larger? Now we have 40 millimeters, see 40, 80, 120 in between rectangles here. But I like to have mine at 10. And I'll tell you why. Because my movements, I have my control plus arrow moves at 0.5 millimeter. My arrow key moves at 5 millimeters. My shift arrow key moves at 20. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if I were to take and draw, let's zoom in just a little bit. I'm going to roll my mouse wheel up to zoom in. I'm going to draw an object. Just a primitive. I'm going to select it. Now you'll see where it's located on the grid. It snaps right into that corner right there. That's my snap spacing. And now if we come up here, back in here, arrow is 5 millimeters. Okay? I want a 10 millimeter grid spacing. So you see that it moved exactly 5 millimeters. If I press my arrow key again, it moves exactly 10 millimeters. Now, let's come back up in here again. Next is control and arrow. Moves it just 0.5 millimeters. So just a 0.5 millimeter. And why would I want that? Well, if I were to press Control and D right now, I've just duplicated this object. And if I move it down here, let's say I move it right here, and I want to move it up Well, that's too far. See? So I'm going to use my Control plus arrow key to move it just a little bit at a time so that I can get them perfectly aligned. See how that works? All right, let's move it back down again. Now we have Shift plus arrow moves it 20 millimeters. So let's take a look at that. So this is 10, 20. So if I put my mouse right here, and I press Shift plus arrow, it will move it exactly to where my mouse is. And I like these particular settings because they're very accurate. So now let's talk for a second about snaps. Again, in the settings, you have your grid snap distance here. I have mine set at 0.5 millimeters. You can change these numbers to whatever you want. If you want it to snap every millimeter, that's okay. Then I have my tolerance set to 5 millimeters and my snap distance to 15. And I'll show you how that works. Let's put this in line mode. I'm going to select this object and I'm going to bring this down, and did you see it snap right in there? And I have my numbers set high because I want it to snap quickly from a long distance. So that's the reason why I have my snap distance at 15 millimeters. It's much easier to snap things this way. See how it snapped right into place there? Snapped into the middle, snapped on top, snapped to the middle on the side. It will snap to the middle on the corner. And wherever you put it, it'll do it within 15 millimeters. It'll snap. Now you can set that to whatever you like as well, but I like having it at 15. It makes it easier. These are what I consider the perfect numbers here. You can change them to whatever you like and, play with it and test it and see how things work for you. This works best for me. Everything else in this panel is going to be pretty much okay right out of the default when you do your first install. So let's go over to file settings real quick while we're in here. And some of the things that these should all be set default properly. So you want to group imported shapes. Anytime you bring in a shape, let's say you bring in a DXF file that you've created somewhere else, it may be ungrouped. So you want that to be grouped when you bring it in. You want to import hidden layers. All of this should be fine. Here you can set your default fonts. I like Arial, default height 15 millimeters. And if you use SHX fonts, you can set the path to it. I do. I have my path set. You can change this to whatever you want. If you don't use SHX fonts, you don't have to worry about it. Now, DHF import settings, you always want to have this on auto detect in millimeters. And over here, if you're using Inkscape or Illustrator, you pick one of those two. Everything else should be fine as regular settings, and we're not going to cover every setting in this tutorial. The next thing we're going to jump into real quick are the device settings. And this is important. A lot of people have this beginner mode checked. You definitely don't want to have that. Everything else should be set okay by default. Now, if your toolbar is too small and you can't see it, if you're an older person, have bad vision, you can drag this over and make the toolbars whatever size that you like. And this is the default style here. I bring it up just one so that I can see everything. If you're using a diode laser, you want to be set to millimeters per minute. If you're using a CO2 laser, millimeters per second, or any of the other. This is the most common setting for diode lasers. The grid contrast, I leave in low contrast. I just like it that way. You can go medium, or you can go high contrast, and if I click OK, you'll see that it's in high contrast now. But if I come back to the gear up here, I put mine in low contrast. That's the way that I like it. The snapping. You always want to have snap to objects and snap to grids selected if you're using those snap settings that I showed you earlier. If you're doing something that's very precise, or you want to move it to a particular place where it doesn't snap, then you can turn off the snap to objects. These are your camera settings. If you have a camera set up, we're not going to cover that today. So let's come into the device settings. And here are your basic settings. Now on your diode laser, you're going to be bottom left is going to be your origin. On a CO2, it'll be top left or top right. The pointer offset is only if you're using a red dot pointer. This is for CO2 users. It's not for diode lasers. And so is the Z-axis control. That's for CNC machines. I do use Lightburn for my CNC as well. So I do change these settings when I go on CNC. This here, working size, is very important. You have to have the correct size of your work bed. Now I'm using an Ortur Laser Master 2, which is 400 millimeters wide by 430 high. I do not have Auto Home on startup checked off, but you probably would want to have that checked off because most people auto home when they start their machine. Now the fast white space scan is also important. I don't remember what the default Lightburn setting is, but I think it was 1,000. I usually set mine on about 7,000, like so. I'm going to show you real quick what that means. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Let's create a circle and offset it. Say OK. And we'll just go ahead and select, delete that one. We'll select all of these and we'll group them together and put it in fill mode. All right. Now if we come to preview, you'll see there's the white space. See this red pointer? That is your laser, and that's how it's going to travel. It's going to travel all of that white space at whatever speed that you set here. So let's say, for instance, you have your speed at 1500, and you go to preview. You'll see it'll take 8 minutes and 15 seconds to do this. And that's all that white space that it's scanning there would be going at 1500 if you didn't have your white space scan set up higher. So setting this to 7,000 means that when you go and do this, these lines here will burn at 1500 speed. This white space in between will burn at 7,000 speed. Well, it won't burn, it'll skip it, but it'll travel from here to here at 7,000 millimeters instead of 1500. That's what the white space scan is. Now obviously you should go to, if you're doing something like this, offset fill. And what that will do is it will go around in a circle and you won't have any white space. See how that circle is getting smaller and smaller? This is where it would start. Your laser will go around in a circle until it fills that entire circle. And you'll see now the time is 3 minutes and 27 seconds. So that's just a quick tip. So let's jump back up into the settings again. Now, return to finish is something I like to enable. I find a spot on my laser bed. My perfect spot is 200 on the X and 290 on the Y. And that always makes the laser move off of my workspace because I usually work in the front of my work bed, and it gives me room to maneuver. You can set it to whatever you like. If you need to find out how to get that position, you can come over here, move the laser to wherever you want, and then click Get Position, and you'll see the numbers here. So let's come back up here again. SValue Max. Okay, so this is something that's important, really important, and I believe when you install Lightburn, your SValue Max is going to be 255. The first thing that you want to change when you've installed Lightburn, you need to check this right off the bat and change this to 1000. What this means in Gerbil language is that actually what it is a spindle speed for a CNC. So the amount of rotations. But we're not using a CNC, we're using a laser. So this it equates to a power instead. 1000 equals 100% in Gerbil. Now the way that you can check this is if you come to your console and you type in here $$ and press enter, you'll see that number 30, $30 is 1000. Well, that matches what we have here, our SValue Max. But if your SValue Max is set at 255, this $30 will be 255 as well. It's going to send that to your controller. So you want to make sure that this is set at 1000 for your diode laser. Now, talking about CNCs, I also have a CNC that I use Lightburn with. So I set up my macro here to use my CNC settings. And if I right click on this, you'll see that it changes my $30 to 255, and my $32 to 0. And those are the settings that I need for my CNC. But if I right click on my laser settings, you'll see that my $30 is 1000, my $32 is 1, and these are the settings that change between the two. And all I have to do is click the macro when I switch from laser to CNC. You can right click on any macro, name it up in the top, and put whatever special controls you want in here for Gerbil. The next thing I want to talk about quick is resetting your laser. So now you'll see that my laser is ready. I have my Ortur Laser Master 2 selected over here, and I'm on my COM7. Now if for some reason you see choose as an example, and when you pull this down you don't see the right port, my computer has COM6 COM5. This is a virtual port for the laser. So if it's not there and you only see your standard ports, well then what you do is you right click on this devices button. Now this, you don't want to left click on it, because if you left click on it, it's going to show you all the devices you have installed. Okay? You want to right click on this, and if you watch up here where it says disconnected, I'm going to choose my COM port, and if it wasn't there I would right click. Okay, then that would bring up my virtual COM port. Now it would appear over here. So if your COM port's not appearing, right click. Now select it, and it says ready, but watch what happens if I right click on it again. Disconnected, ready. If I come to my console, you'll see that it reread the controller and it reset it. So that covers that. Make sure you keep your optimized cut path here so that Lightburn optimizes the cut path. Now let's go back up to the devices one more time, and let's come over here to additional settings. Now what this is, this additional settings tells Lightburn what your controller is. So let's say for instance I have 222 in there, 1000 in there, 50 in there. I have all the wrong numbers, okay? And I say okay. When I come to my preview window, it's going to tell me 19 seconds, all right? But if I come back up in here to the additional settings and I read it from the controller, watch these numbers when I click read. That automatically just filled in all of the proper numbers here, and this is only for simulation settings in the preview window. So it just filled out all the correct numbers here, and that's what you want to do. One of your first steps is come here and read from the controller. Now if I say OK, you'll notice that the time really hasn't changed, but it's going to give us an accurate preview. If your numbers are off, this number is going to be off down here. Alright, so now, and I'm just covering a lot of the basics here today, and mostly just questions that a lot of people have asked me. The next thing we're going to move on to is libraries. Well, your library, let me get rid of all this. And I'll even get rid of that library, and I will even get rid of this one. If you don't have libraries down here, all you have to do is right click on here on the title bar up here and click on library, and then right click again on the title bar, click on art library. So now we have art library, regular library for cuts and layers. So my art library is empty, and I can resize this just by dragging this up like so. My art library is completely empty, and people always ask me, where did you get all of those libraries that are in there? Well, I loaded them. When I click on load, you have to have libraries to begin with. When I click on load, it takes me to my desktop Lightburn art. Double click on that, bring in an alphabet library. I can load again, and I can pick another one. I have hundreds of libraries in here, and I can bring in my Aztec art. Okay, and they just load up automatically. In here is where you store all of your work that you do. So if I wanted something from here, let's say the letter A, and then I wanted to type someone's name, I just double click it to bring it out. Now all of these libraries, I have several of them that I've uploaded to my forums website, and you can log on there. There'll be a link below in the description where you can log on to my forums and create an account. And this is the actual forum here. The first thing you'd need to do is create an account. I already have an account, so I can see this right here. This is members only files and downloads. You won't be able to see this until you create an account and log in. But once you do, you'll see this here. And in the download section, you'll see that I have art libraries, I have cut libraries, and other things, fonts. There's all kinds of things here. But let's talk about the art library for right now. Click on the art library, and I have a really fast server, so everything should work really well for you. And please read the top notices and the notes. But once you're done with that, this is what I would suggest you do is follow this to a T. Organization is extremely important when it comes to folders, and you'll follow step, all of these steps here. Create a folder, create arts, create materials, templates, and have everything organized so that you know where everything is. It's easy to get to. So here are all the instructions right here, plain and clear. Then below that, you'll see all the different posts. So for instance, this is my animals art library. All you have to do is click on it to download it. You would download it into your art library. This is a cartoon library. You download the attachment. It's just that simple. All of these different libraries are available for you to download on my website. Let's say we wanted to create a new one. All we would have to do is click the new button down here, create new, and this will bring me to my desktop, Lightburn Art. And these are all of my libraries, folders, and LBR files. And let's say I wanted to do something like Jones. And why would I do this? And I hit save. And now you see Jones comes up. And I'll tell you why I would do this. This is one of my customers, let's say. And let's say Mr. Jones ordered a sign. Well, actually, let's just do it the right way. Ordered a sign with his name in it. And I went ahead and created that sign for him really quickly. Now what I would do is I would select all of these, come to Jones, and then click Import Graphic from Project. Now I'll name this a date usually. So what I'll do is 09/26/2021 and say OK. And now I can delete this and keep on working on something else. And when Mr. Jones calls me back in the future and says, oh, we lost our camping sign, I can just come back here and say, yes, Mr. Jones, I can get that done for you quickly. And there it is, ready to go. That's just how easily it is to save your customer files. And that's probably one of the best things about the art library is saving customer files. Although it's great to have all kinds of cool stuff in here as well. So for instance, let's say we went to cartoons as an example. Let's get rid of Mr. Jones here. And let's say we wanted Alvin and the Chipmunks. I've got it right here. And let's say we wanted his little girlfriend, which I don't remember what her name is, but we've got her too. And I've got all kinds of cartoons in here. Some of these you'll probably recognize, but I have everything right here. So all of my cartoon libraries are in here. And that's the great thing about this. And you can get rid of them whenever you don't need them. If I don't need Mr. Jones, I just say unload, and that goes away. And you can just work with whatever libraries you need at the moment. So now when it comes to library over here, these are your cut libraries. So for instance, let's say I wanted to do this on craft paper. Well, what I would do is, now if you come up here and look at this speed and power in my cuts and layers, this is a really quick shortcut. Once you've done your test burns, whether it's vector graphic or raster images, you can come in here and create libraries like I have here. And I'm doing craft paper. I want to engrave it. Okay, so I'm just moving the down arrows. Just expand the arrow, come to engrave, and watch these numbers right here when I click this button here that says assign to layer. Here we go. See how that just changed it? 9,000 speed, 55 power, and this is what is going to engrave on my craft paper. But let's say that I was putting it on leather as an example, and I'm going to engrave it. I'll assign that to the layer. Watch what happens. Now you can't see this part, but 9,100 speed. So now let's say that I'm changing lasers, going to a different laser. You can have all types of libraries. So I click load and it brings me to my library, Lightburn or Lightburn Cut. And let's say I was using my NAJ. So my 4060 NAJ. I'd hit that. And now you see these are my NAJ settings. So let's say I was doing plywood, 2mm engrave. Now watch up top, 1150 power. Let's say I wanted to cut it, assign it to a layer, 480 and 80. And that's how nicely these libraries work. I do have a complete video on libraries, how to create them, how to install them, and so forth. But it really is very, very simple. Alright, so the final thing we're going to talk about today is text. I get a lot of people asking me how they can cut text, and we're going to do that right now. So right now we'll just put in some text. We'll select it, make it larger. I'm going to put it on a fill. Now, how do I cut this section out of the middle of the text? Well, it's really very simple. Just grab your rectangle tool over here. Click and drag across where you think you want it to cut. So let's say we wanted it to cut right there. Now all we would do is click on the selector tool, click on the text itself, and here's a great new feature in Lightburn, the assistant. So if we go to Tools and Boolean Assistant, you can get a preview of everything here. Now that obviously is not what we want. That's not what we want. That's not what we want. This is the one that we want right here. We want to subtract the difference, B from A. So we say OK, and there we go. And now all you have to do is take in here. Well, let's bring this down to about 30. And we'll do some more text. And now we're ready to go. Just bring that up in the middle. And there's how you cut text. If you want to do something different, like let's say you wanted to cut this text, the word text, with this center word here, well, then what we would do there, let's just put in here another text. Let's grab it, make it larger. Let's just reuse this one over here. Take and put some more text here in the middle, and let's make it a little bit larger, like so. And maybe scale it in a little bit here, and scale it in a little bit here, and that's the way we want it. So what we're going to do now is, with this some more text selected, we're going to offset shapes. I like to use about 2 outward, round, say OK. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that one more time and say OK. So now everything is selected here. Leave it the way it is. Pass your mouse over the word text. Press the Shift or Control button. Click on that and come over here to Weld Shapes. And now, if we take a preview of this, you'll see that we've welded that together. Now at this point, we have 3 different sets of text here. So we can move this one out like so and delete it. And let's get rid of this one too while we're here. And there is what we have for our, so let's put it back on the work plane and take a preview. And now you can see that gives you a perfect cutout with your word text in the background and your some more text over here. So there you go. That's how you do it. All you do is just pull off the top layer. This is so easy to do. There are several different ways to do this actually, but this I find the easiest, just offsetting it twice and pulling off the top layer. So there you have it. That answers the most frequently asked questions that I get on other platforms and also here on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I thank you for watching.